Hi everyone and welcome back to SwitchUp, and to that episode where I go over some of the recent patches that have been released for various titles. We've got titles like No Man's Sky, Selfloss, Wrath, Aeon of Ruin, Reynatis, Caravan, Sandwitch, the Plucky, Squire, and Valfaris. It's quite a chunk of an episode. Let me know, as always, in the comments, games that have been patched up or ones that you're keeping your eye on. And if you enjoy this series at all, do let me know. It definitely motivates me. My goodness, it's a beast to make. Which games have hopefully been all patched up? Well, my name's Mark Walker. Welcome back to SwitchUp. Tickle all the buttons. Now, let's find out. Let's start off then with No Man's Sky. We recently had the 5.0 update come out, which added in a ton of new visual features, new water effects. I even did a massive retrospective video. If you missed that one, it was basically me just going over the amount of updates that they've had and what they've done to the No Man's Sky on Switch. But now we've got the No Man's Sky Aquarius update, which adds in a brand new storyline essentially, where you start out by finding a message in a bottle. You fix up your ship and you go off to various planets that have a water theme. It's full of new fishing in the game as well. And performance wise, well, we're looking still reasonably good for what we've got here. Around 30 FPS, a few dips and stutters, and again, No Man's Sky on Switch, if you've played it for a while, you'll know that there are ways of crashing this game, and that you will always be able to find a way, I think, of crashing it. There are some limits you can put into things like building items to try and make sure that doesn't happen as much. But still, this Aquarius update is a whole lot of fun, and it's just another reason to jump back into the game. I always like to give No Man's Sky and Hello Games credit in these videos, so yeah, once again, they've put out another brand new free content update that you can go try out, and the Switch is an enjoyable way of playing that game. Oh, and yeah, go check out that little retrospective video I did. I'll pop a link in the description if you're interested. Next up, we've got Selfloss. This launched obviously with version 1.0, and we did a little video on it. Unfortunately, performance wasn't quite where I think anyone would like it to be. It was okay, but that pre-patch gameplay certainly wasn't the best. You had quite a bit of frame dropping. The actual visual quality was noticeably worse than what we'd played at Gamescom, because we played a later build that Nintendo hadn't signed off on yet. Now with version 1.0.3, it's night and day. Now, it might not look like night and day to you, but it's so much smoother than it was before. You've got a much more fluid 30 FPS that's much more consistent. Frame pacing hovers around 30 milliseconds. There are a couple of dips and spikes, but generally it feels so much better than it did. And the image quality is also improved. It just looks sharper. Those animations, due to the frame rate, look more fluid, and it is a lovely looking game, isn't it? Very melancholic. It has that Disco Elysium style music, which really did hook me. And even in the more demanding areas like the C section here, it still maintains its frame rate most of the time. So yeah, a big improvement really for Selfloss. If you bought it at day one, download the latest patch. I think you'll have a much more pleasant experience. It's really sad actually, isn't it? Merge games have been shut down. I don't know if you knew that. I think Maximum Entertainment have kind of bought them out and then shut down that part. Hopefully they continue, but yeah, sad times. Selfloss though, in a decent state. Now, Wrath, Aeon of Ruin, this was an interesting one. This launched on the Switch, and if you're not familiar, it's like a modern Quake. So it's like a modern re-release of a Quake-style game, and it actually used on other platforms the Quake engine. Now, on console, they decided they would almost like, I don't know, make a version of it that ran on Unity, and it's just not the same. Now, I was hoping with the latest patch they'd fix, well, obviously they're not going to completely re-engine the game, but there was an issue with the Joy-Con whereby when you enabled motion controls, what you would expect is that the right Joy-Con would be used for the camera, right? And then the left one kind of for the movement. But yeah, it's not at all. And it was like a twist to steer. It was just terrible. With this patch, have they fixed it? No, they haven't. It's just as bad as it was before, as you can see. Twist to move, it's just a disaster. So yeah, I mean, it's still an okay game, but I'd be waiting for a significant discount on it, because I don't know why you wouldn't fix that really. It's literally like one line of code. So yeah, I don't know. Who knows? But it's not fixed if you're interested. Now, Caravan Sandwitch. This is a lovely little game. I enjoy this a lot. You're essentially looking for a relative. You go to this planet that was your hometown once, and you've got your little van that you ride around in. You can scan things and look for areas. You can see from the launch footage here that performance within a town area wasn't great. Now sadly, I don't really need to show you the 1.0.3 update because performance is exactly the same in those areas. It fluctuates from 17 to 40 frames per second, but what I have noticed diving beneath the hood of this game in particular is that it's very CPU limited. The Switch's CPU just isn't fast enough to run this one. Using a dev kit, if you overclock or put the CPU to its maximum, you can actually get this to run reasonably well, but yeah, it's very CPU limited, which is strange for the Switch. It's usually the graphics card that's the issue. So here you still do get some stutters. Now in the open areas it's much better, and thankfully a lot of your time is spent going around searching for those radio towers and looking for clues and secrets, and you may actually be able to have quite a pleasant time there. But still in the town area, performance not great, between 17 and 40 FPS as I say. Reynatis was a very good action RPG. I really did enjoy it, even though it wasn't the most inspiring game in the world. It suffered from some very big performance issues in certain areas. You were looking at around about 25 to 30 most of the time, but then when you got to the large open city spaces, it would just tank. Now we've had a couple of patches, and with the latest performance patch, the image quality looks to be slightly sharper. I will give them that. Things like the shadow resolution, the character models, it just looks a little sharper to my eye, but performance is not good. As you can see in this first area, around 25 to 28, it's okay, I can handle this. But we move into that open city area, and I have to be honest, it looks like performance has actually dropped, especially for the first few moments while it loads in assets. And again, the CPU just struggles, and the GPU probably is on fire. It's around 18 to 22 frames per second, not what you want from a brand new release. As I said in my review, it didn't actually kill the game for me because there's quite a lot of space where that's not the case, and there are entire areas where it runs fine. But I was hoping 2 patches deep that things would be in a better state, but they are not, sadly. So we need more patches, more love for Reynatis because it is a good game. Next up, we've got Valfaris Mecha Therion, which had so many stutters when it launched. Now, Glen reviewed this for us. I believe he may have had a slight issue with his footage, so this may not be representative of the launch game. I think what happened was I sent him some 60 frames footage, and then he downloaded it and screen capped it or something like that then reduced it to 30. There was a reason, but either way, the footage wasn't quite right. But regardless of that, there were still stutters and drops that you can probably see in that visual, and the actual image quality as well, it just wasn't great. A little muddy, rough around the edges, and even with that visual style, it couldn't hide the fact that actually it just didn't look brilliant. Now, version 1.1.1 has launched, and I'm happy to say it's a much smoother experience. At 60 frames per second, it isn't completely locked out, does drop down to about 55, sometimes 50, and in those moments you will slightly notice it, but frame pacing is generally quite consistent. Again, not perfect, the Switch very rarely is, but a much smoother experience, much less stutter, and the input latency seems to have gone down as a result of that, so that it just feels more enjoyable to play. Now with that said, there was one special effect, I can't pin it down, but it seemed to introduce a strange controller latency. I only experienced it maybe once or twice, but I did think I should mention it in case some of you get something similar. But generally in terms of the actual image performance, it is much better. Last but not least then, we have the Plucky Squire. Now, although I very much enjoyed the game and the art style for me won out, I think I made a slight faux pas in my review in that I didn't hit the largest area for frame rates. I had completed the entire game on PC and then got the Switch build, hit a few of the areas I thought might be problematic, but never got quite the performance drops that other people did. So with that in mind, I think this is almost my slight redemption really. Now we're on version 1.0.3. Visually, I think the game still isn't quite where we'd like it. Mainly things like the text text boxes, due to the low resolution, do suffer from aliasing and they just look a bit dodgy. Now the 2D areas, things like the large city, that was probably one of the worst places. In the 2D aspect, it's fine. You're looking at 28 to 32. There does seem to be an uncapped frame rate, or either that on my software, and I do see that go up and down slightly strangely, but generally it feels smoother in this location. When I flip to 3D and we move outside of this, that's where we can see perhaps the biggest performance hit for Switch. It really does struggle here for a few moments. When we push outside of the confines of the book, things do improve and it goes back to a more manageable frame rate. Compared to what we saw on some of the places, it does seem like they have managed to improve things a little. I wonder how much they can do, honestly. I did mention that they do have some of the more advanced shadow options, which surprises me. The PC version on minimal had much less shadow than the Switch version has right now. I do think there's something they could do there, honestly. I'd rather have a more consistent frame rate and lower quality or less or even no shadows, or perhaps an option for a performance mode on Switch. Still a slight improvement, definitely, so potentially worth going back to if those were issues for you. So that's it for today. I think that is quite a beast of an episode. What you don't know is I lost all of my footage and had to redo the entire thing. Words were definitely said, but hopefully it was worth it for you guys. I also did go and download Batman Arkham Knight because someone, I think they were trolling me. They were like, I'm sure there was a big update that came out. There was not an update. It still runs like absolute gaff. So yeah, it's still one to avoid. Developers, what are you playing at? Why isn't there an update? And why didn't you sell your games individually like you said you would? Upsetting. So that's it. Thank you to our Patreons, our members, all of you that enjoy this series. For all things Switch, all the time, keep a Switch up. Cheers guys. See ya!